And you can see some of the differences in the boats. The California ones tend to be much smaller than the Polynesian boats. So what they're arguing here is that Polynesian peoples, not these white races from sailing out Tiki style, landed in southern Chile. Why southern Chile? It's because the most direct route along the currents and the southern route, it's a very cold route, the currents will take you right to the south coast of Chile. And then you could just easily take the Humboldt Current, which roars up to the north. You go offshore a little bit, it just takes you up to Ecuador. And from there, load up your boat and take off the same way Heyerdahl did across back to Polynesia. And the idea, the speculation is that they did this multiple times, not just once, and they lived to tell about it. It needs a lot of work. We got to find the settlements associated with these. You got to find more of the materials in archaeological context. So in some ways, it suffers from many of the same problems that Thor Heyerdahl's arguments have, and I've even seen his name mentioned in a lot of the critiques of some of their popular work that come out. But the difference here, I think, is these are scholars, archaeologists, geneticists, art historians, linguists, who are participating with the scientific field, publishing in peer-reviewed journals, and getting critiqued right and left, and producing more and more and more evidence to try to make their point. I think it's a very different kind of trajectory than Thor Heyerdahl. So to conclude, Thor Heyerdahl was a worldwide celebrity, and some people have pointed out that his expeditions were equivalent to European exploration of the New World or more recent space exploration in the 1960s and 70s. Great journeys into the unknown, lots of unpredictable factors, technology that could fail, and a probability of being lost and maybe even death. But there were appreciations for indigenous knowledge, engineering, navigation skills, astronomy, marine technology, survival skills, and probably more important, storage techniques to be able to take enough food and water with you. And if you sort of take these sort of outside of some of the criticism that was raised about his racism, he contributed quite a bit. Being a big thinker, he not only thought big on a geographic scale, but also a temporal scale, sometimes maybe too much. For me, the best stuff was the experimental archaeology. And he really showed what could be done using indigenous technology recorded from historical records, from some archaeological evidence, but it doesn't really say what actually happened in the past or its implications. And for me, a lot of this is, I think the interesting parts are some of his whimsical writing about sort of what he feels like when he's writing Kon-Tiki and some of his other explorations, is this sort of sense of, you think about, well, if you don't know where you're going, you land on a beach, are the people going to welcome us or are they going to eat us? Or more likely probably enslave you. And how are you going to convince them, not knowing their language, that you're okay and you could live with them, restock your boat, maybe continue with your journey. And what kind of knowledge would be exchanged? What would be permanent changes in these kinds of contacts? And what would be things that would maybe just sort of be dismissed? Oh, yeah, there's some weird people came here and spoke a different language. They had a great boat, cool boat, and they left. So we really don't know. But there have been many copycat expeditions. Some of these were exploring new realms or new areas of Heyerdahl's exploration. But you can see some of the major ones here. This is sort of a cottage industry, probably big money too, of expeditions. There was one just fairly recently, I think in 2012. This is my favorite, though, Tiki. So this was a boat made of plastic bottles, the kind you dump in landfills. It was meant as an environmental protest. So it actually floats as a catamaran built of empty, milk jugs and things. And it was to sail up through the debris deposited by the tsunami from Japan that drifted across the ocean. Another example of how things can move. Ended up on the coast of Alaska and Western Canada. And this was meant to be a political statement, but a cool one. Now, Heyerdahl later in life was also an outspoken proponent of the environment and very anti-war. And one of his last expeditions with the Tigris, going through the southern Middle East, he was not allowed to put land at any port along the route because of the ongoing conflicts there. And he actually burned his boat in protest for the problems of war. He died in 1980, at the age of 87, in Italy of a brain tumor, and he has incredible ongoing popularity. His descendants are actually explorers too, and followers that have been actively managing his legacy in Norway and throughout the world. This is the Thor Heyerdahl Museum in Norway. Many of his books are still in print today. And I don't know how many versions of Kon-Tiki there are, but it's probably his 20th or 30th edition. I go around my shelves of my colleagues, usually the senior colleagues, look at their bookshelves in their office or at home. You can always find 4 or 5 of Thor Heyerdahl books on their shelf. Even in death, he lives on. So there was the Hollywood film that many of you might have seen, Norwegian-produced film, 2012, Kon-Tiki, that covers the journey, the preparation and the journey of Kon-Tiki, not the rest of his life. The Kon-Tiki book was published in 70 different languages, and they estimate some 50 million copies were sold worldwide. So I highly recommend reading it if you want an escape from your lives. Thank you.